Icon Studios, it's Coffee Kevin.
Hi, thank you, Pat. I'm getting better at not being deer in headlights when you announce it. I don't know why; it always surprises me. I have a guest today who's a friend and a great coffee personality, Marcus Boni,
Yep.
and Marcus Melkonig.
Malkunik, yes.
Melkunig. I got to learn to
Malkunig,
say that.
right? Yeah,
Yeah.
I still mess it up every
My
time.
son always corrects me. It's Dad. It's Melkunig, Melkonig to
Yeah.
a North Sider. You know.
Sure, right? Yeah, maybe not the south side, but the north side is
right.
for sure.
Well, my neighborhood. Marcus, let's see. You have worked in. Let's see. You've worked for Espresso Supply.
Oh goodness.
Intelli.
Yes, I have a storied past, and I've been all over the place. Really.
Yeah, but the breadth of the interesting thing, if I may say,
Sure.
is you've worked for a number of companies that aren't just. It's not just like you moved from one company that did the same thing. You moved to a whole different area.
Yeah,
Brewing to roasting.
retail to brewing to I'm pretty blessed, right? Like to be able to cut your teeth in coffee, so to say, at Intelligentsia. I mean, starting there as a barista, working my way up, working with Doug and his wife at the time, and kind of learning all about coffee in my time there, running their retail stores, moving to the SCAA for almost 4 years,
Right. Yeah.
helping
Wow.
with barista competitions, and then moving to both Caldi's and then Espresso Supply. Some pretty interesting kind of pathway, right? Like not this kind of understood and well planned, but do.
Now it sounds like you're saying this wasn't. I always wonder. I'm not like this, so I'm describing not me. But some people seem really methodical.
Yeah.
I think of a general before a battle. Planning out each hill we're taking.
All charted,
Yeah.
all in one specific
Not you.
trajectory. No, I'm all over the place. I'm a disaster, really. But
Oh,
but but what's
I
been
wouldn't say
interesting
that.
is I've met a ton of wonderful coffee people along my journey. Through those relationships, through kind of my own work, my own commitment to certain things, I've gotten some great opportunities from that. I think I'm a scrappy little guy, so I like to kind of, probably bite off a pretty big opportunity. Maybe something that hey, I think I can do this. Who knows if I can actually pull it off? And then work alongside really interesting, dynamic, unique individuals that give me some really great opportunities too. So that gives you a little bit of a hey, this looks bright, shiny, interesting. Let's try this.
If there's one connecting thread to the list that you rattled off,
Mm-hmm.
I think it speaks well for the companies, as you described yourself, someone who will try something and, that they may be able to do,
Right.
that they were apparently had the flexibility to let someone stretch a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it, Kevin. I think, if you're hardworking, if you're committed to kind of the same goals, those goals usually around how can we make this coffee experience better, whether it's through a brewer, whether it's through a retail experience or a coffee product, whether it's through amongst our community, working with the SCA to make those barista competitions, the Roasters Guild retreat, those events, make those better. And make them more engaging and more kind of meeting them where they're at in that specific circumstance. As long as you've got that strong foundation of focusing on those key components, and then you want to work with alongside really great people that challenge you, that create some really nice environments where you can be successful. And then kind of push you outside of your comfort zone. I think you've made a good observation though that it doesn't kind of work if they just say here fix this and we'll see you when you need something, but it's given me an opportunity to both kind of challenge myself a little bit more, to work inside of my wheelhouse in ways that I think are partnered with things that are focused on making things better, whether it's coffee, whether it's that retail experience, etc. And then also just working with some pretty great people along the way too.
Now, what's the goal at Melkunig?
I think, well done on that, Mel Koenig. I think what we're focused on primarily is we have a great product, right? We We have a range of products that really speak primarily to the commercial world, that are consistent, that are kind of more easy to maintain, that are there when you need them. They're strong performing pieces of equipment, and they have a range. Throughout our portfolio, you'll see a range of product that work for a wide variety of customers, whether you want to dial in on a very specific grind setting to extract the absolute best flavor out of your coffee, or whether you want a piece of equipment that is a little more kind of consistent and able to kind of set it to a certain degree, modify when needed, but really have it performing for you consistently without a whole lot of touch point. Mahlkönig makes products that fit all of those categories. I think the next step for Mahlkönig is really innovating inside of our own product line. So looking at product that has done traditionally very well for us, like the K30 espresso grinder, as we've introduced the next version of that, what we call the next generation, looking more at digital features, more automation, easier abilities to clean the product, easier ability to maintain your product, to promote something that allows you to clean your grinder more frequently rather than just a couple screws to remove the burr sets. I know I'm getting into very geeky territory.
Yeah, no, that's
here,
good. I like where you're headed.
But keeping it really clean and easy to clean and maintain too.
Is there any thought about, it seems to me, we can go off on grinding for a second. I hope it's okay, Pat. I'm going off the subject. Okay, sorry. I know I gave her an outline.
We'll get scolded later.
We haven't seen it. You haven't seen it. You've got a defense. Is that grinding is one thing that seems like it's outside of the automatic brewer. I know there have been some attempts to automate, including a grinder in an automatic brewer, and of course there's big problems with it, as the friends at through the Housewares show, all the different manufacturers that have done it tell me, wow, that's a big problem because you got all that steam moisture floating coming around a grinder is not good. It's not the two environments don't go together.
Right.
That's a problem that I don't think we're going to solve today. But I'm asking if one thing grinders aren't is automated yet. I mean, to the point that if instead of dialing in a number on the grinder, will it ever be possible to dial in the micron thickness, which is what the spec is of the grind, and then have the grinder figure it out?
Yeah, I think so with innovation in all of, let's say, the brewer category, other housewares categories, there's certainly technology that can translate into the grinding category too. I would take full responsibility in saying that as an individual that works for a grinding company, we haven't done a great job translating that back into a good end user home experience, right? Like we haven't really started yet to combine grinding at home innovation along the same path as what we see, from my perspective, from a home brewing innovation side of things. We haven't done any kind of integrated grind setting, particle size setting analysis to say, hey, I'm brewing with this type of brewer today. How can I make sure that my grinder is specifically aligned to be able to give me the best grind result for that brewer? And there's ways to do that. Is it cheap? Not necessarily. Is there a market for it? Let's figure that out and discover it a bit more. But there can be a lot more kind of, I guess, of a symbiotic relationship between the brewer or the brewer's choice of brewer and what your grinder can really perform to make it a very approachable experience for the consumer too. I would say even before kind of going down to that level of detail of making sure our particle size is exactly right for what the brewer is using at that point, what we should be doing is finding ways to kind of make them both work in their current state. So encouraging the fact that, hey, grinding fresh, grinding at home can be one of the biggest influencers on you having a better cup of coffee at home. How do we start with that approach? How do we make grinding at home less complicated, more approachable, and give them a piece of equipment where it's not specifically tailored for just espresso, it's not specifically like cheap and easy and we think that that's the best way to do fresh grinding at home, that there's a balance of, let's create a piece of equipment that can grind great for espresso, great for your coffee brewer, great for your pour over, great for French press, great for cold brew. All of these new ways where folks are brewing at home today, not necessarily new, but seemingly new. How can we create something that works for all of those categories and then a focus of how can we educate and inform that end user to know what's the best option in grinding to meet each of those brewing needs too. I'd say let's start that way, not overcomplicate it, because we have a lot of work to do just at that point too.
Agreed. I guess the only way a consumer can currently get, I'm putting words in your mouth, and you just tell me yes, I don't mean to set you up, is it sounds like what you're saying is I think the only way that I can get a Mancunic grinder in my home right now, short of buying a commercial machine, and believe me, I'm not above doing that, or below doing that. I have a commercial grinder, but I definitely would say is the Baratza, the highest end Baratza machine. Not that I don't know if that is, but I'm talking about the Virtuoso. Is that the one that has Mancunic?
So we are Baratza's a great partner. Some of their line carries, components or look very close to what here in the U.S. specifically look very close to a Mancunic product. So the Vario W, for example.
Vario.
In
yes.
Europe, the Vario W is a Mancunic item. Here in the U.S., it's different, but specifically it's a Baratza product too. We might supply a few components to that, but the Vario W is probably the closest to what a Mancunic might look like, but it's not really. But Baratza does a fantastic job offering just a wide variety of solutions for a home consumer grinder. They've really thought about this. Let's look at all the scenarios of how people brew at home, what they're willing to invest time-wise every day to brewing at home, and how can we Baratza create a great portfolio of product that meets each of those needs. And I think, Baratza is doing a fantastic job of it here in the United States of reaching out to those consumers to be approachable, to not ask them to say, hey, you need to throw out every piece of equipment if you're really going to brew right. Oh, and by the way, go spend hundreds of dollars on another grinder too. They're trying to find a really nice approach to, we think grinding fresh is going to make one of the biggest differences to you having a better cup of coffee at home. Let's meet you where you're at with this product range, and then let's give you education and content that helps you understand that a little bit more too.
And that is a perfect segue to get into what's happening in the specialty coffee world. We're a Specialty Coffee Association of America.
Yeah.
I finally learned what SCAA means. After 10 years, I memorized it.
You broke that down, right?
And, before the nuns came up and gave me the gold star, finally, doesn't apply himself guy from grade 1 on, finally reached a plateau. I have that down, and then what happened? They yanked the A.
They took it away, right?
Yeah.
We became this big global group, and they took away a letter in that acronym, right?
Yeah, I mean, and now is the U.S. and I hope no one takes me all too seriously. That would I don't know why they would at this point.
Why start now?
Yeah, but if the global thing. I just wonder why what it's all about, and if global really works for something which is already as broad a topic as coffee.
Right. I definitely feel that global works for coffee. Coffee is global in all sense of the word, where it's produced, where it's harvested, where it's processed, where it's shipped, where it's roasted, where it's brewed. It's global. Coffee transcends so many different categories to truly be tradition and ritual for so many of us, and that's what makes it really special. In my days of retail and working with wonderful retail teams, I would often say, hey everyone, number one, in cafes we see our customers oftentimes more than they see their own families, right? Every single morning we give them a product that instantly makes their day better. How special is that? Right?
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. It is. And so not only does that live in Chicago right now, it exists throughout the country and really throughout the world, where you see it in really unique and interesting ways how coffee becomes a part of everyone's daily tradition or daily ritual. And so, in just that sense of it, coffee is global. It impacts lives across the globe in more ways than one. And without some type of unified organization that broadly works to understand its global impact, to understand what place it has in a wide variety of marketplaces throughout the globe, without that kind of unified organization looking at coffee on that level, coffee, I truly feel, would never see its fullest potential, or wouldn't be given the right kind of support to see its fullest potential too. And so that lack of global kind of a global community, or at least a community coming together on things that impacted on a global scale, without that, we weren't quite servicing coffee, we weren't quite giving it the space it needed to really be successful. So, in the vision of past SCAA leadership, current SCAA leadership, Mr. Rick Reinhardt and others, and their vision of, well, what's the best way to who is best suited to really bring coffee together globally? Looking at the different associations that existed at that point, specifically SCAE of Europe and SCAA of America, they're really looking at them as organizations that were best suited to come together, bring together a very large group of coffee leadership, coffee volunteers, lots of professionals in the coffee space to say, let's make sure that coffee has a sustainable future, that as coffee continues to evolve, that as we address things that are definitely impacting both consumers and our lives as coffee professionals, let's build this global organization, bring our two organizations along with all of the branches of those organizations together, give them that common foundation, and then let coffee live throughout that too. And so I think you're starting to see some really great things come together after the merger around addressing the coffee price crisis, around global standards for coffee, around real strong unity around what is the coffee community, how do we make things from a coffee community more approachable, how do we really embrace the uniqueness of our community and let that thrive inside of specialty coffee, and how do we make all of that work together to give consumers a better experience. That, with that whole process, there were some high points, low points, really tough challenges of just bringing the organizations together and then letting that blossom and operate from that perspective. Meanwhile, coffee in the United States, coffee in North America certainly hasn't slowed down by any means. And so as the organizational challenges of those two groups coming together and them focusing on that, meanwhile, there's a lot of folks in the U.S. saying, well, what about us? We used to have this really strong backbone of the Specialty Coffee Association of America, where we could give our input, we could deliver, our expertise through education, through programs, etc. Where's our role in this now? Like, how do we kind of also contribute at that localized level that maybe doesn't feel so local as it did when we were the SCAA? Enter the U.S. chapter for the Specialty Coffee Association. And one thing that's interesting, Kevin, is prior to the merger, where our conduit was always the SCAA, prior to that merger, there existed chapters throughout the globe. Mm-hmm. Whether they had a direct relationship with any of the existing associations or they were kind of independent and maybe there was a letter of understanding or a mutual agreement to work together when it was beneficial for both groups and or just generally support those groups, chapters existed throughout the globe. And what probably we didn't realize as much at this merger, particularly as an American, was, will we become a chapter at some point? Thinking, oh, not much has changed, hunky-dory, this is great. We'll just continue as now the SCA. And then our voice started to not be as relevant in some situations or not as prevalent. And that probably should have been more strongly kind of suggested that, hey, this is the moment for the chapter, the U.S. chapter, to be formed and brought together so that while we're addressing things on a global level, there's still the opportunity for a U.S. community, a North America community to come together as well.
Is there a, and I'm just fishing here, but is there a conqueror mentality that says, I'm just wondering, I'm going really old school here and thinking, is it something that the bad old days, I guess you'd say, where people think in terms of, oh, it's a takeover of the SCAE. And I'm putting this in quasi-military terms. I obviously,
dramatic. I like it.
I try, if I'm nothing else, I try to be dramatic. Is there something about that is like, oh, look, we don't have to go to battle for it. We can talk about, I've been involved in more than one corporate merger where the new guys, so the first thing they do, they have someone from HR meet with everyone and say, hey, nothing's going to change. And that's usually the day before, hey, I got this color of a piece of paper at the meeting. Yeah. And that means I'm out. Yeah. Were some people maybe expecting it to be more like that and instead find out, well, really, they're taking this global thing seriously. It really is a global thing. And there isn't headquarters is in England, is that correct?
Yeah, and there's also a headquarters here in the U.S. There's somewhat of a shared space where they both operate, but I believe as a legal entity, SCAA is registered in the UK at this point, and there's a wide variety of reasons.
Well, you certainly know if we're all drinking tea in 2 years.
Something went wrong. Something went wrong.
You're going to hear from my Irish relatives, I'll tell you.
No, but I think it's there was the certain premise of let's bring these organizations together. There's a lot to figure out in that process. There was no roadmap, right? There was the agreement of like, let's join. We feel that and this was elected upon, we feel that there's power in bringing our forces together. This isn't to say like, okay, like this will, we're intentionally diminishing your voice or your engagement or what have you, but there's power in us uniting in things that we're raising our hands saying we're not getting to that as a unified or an aligned approach because that's just not how we operate. And let's also remember that like this is still our association. It's still made up of volunteers. There is no like corporate entity living here. It's still the board, the volunteer leadership, etc. It's still all just us engaging in this. And so while it might feel a little like there's some kind of maneuvering and strategy in play, I think the process of the merger is still unfolding, and our mutual and shared response to not only that activity but also things that we witness inside of the coffee space that need to be addressed of, hey, while everyone at the association is still figuring out the best way to kind of continue to work together, by the way, there's a massive crisis that needs to be addressed in our community. There is a wage issue that needs to be elevated and talked about and solved for. We have to attack these in a parallel path at the same time. I think the association is realizing that some of those are more localized conversations and effort that need to continue to be supported by the volunteer base that exists, because that's the best way to get anything done. It's not through overly complicated process that's part of the association now. It's through how do we as business owners, as leadership inside of our community, how do we make the best kind of change happen inside of the communities and spaces that we operate in today.
And that all sounds really good, actually. I mean, to me, that is, and I understand there's going to be, I'm enough of a realist, there's going to be challenges along the way, I'm sure. Yeah. But it sounds like the right move. Let me ask a question specific to one group where I think the one group that I have the most empathy for, and it isn't mine, it isn't the consumer. I think the consumer has got, a lot of, we have never had it better. We've never had more good coffees. Yeah. We've never had more good roasters. We've never had more traceability of our product, that we're consuming in my prodigious proportions in my case. And we great brewers, what about the farmer? Where's the farmer in all this? And as I hit the on button over here, I got to remember the most important thing is for us to have coffee. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you for speaking my love language, but yes, I think as far as the farmer's place, I think that definitely extends back into the goal of the merger of the associations was to make a bigger impact directly at those points in our supply chain, in our process, that we weren't making a big enough impact on to begin with. I think elevating causes on a unified approach, not just from one singular perspective, elevating causes that deeply impact what's happening at origin, what's happening with farmers, and we certainly haven't solved for it, and I'm not sure that there's any one singular solution, but elevating that as clear objectives to accomplish that are very important, that are very key, and how can we come together and solve those? That is a great example of many voices championing for the same thing, making a deeper impact and a more positive result too. And I think again, the global price crisis is a key initiative of that, and I think even more further supported than it ever could have been just from a U.S. perspective or a European perspective. We're coming together as a group to talk about this, talk about ways that can make a significant impact, communicating that information out so that I, as a small, retailer, small roasters, small, equipment company, all the way up to I, as a massive organization that buys a lot of coffee, I have a conduit in which I can start to contribute something into that too. Or there's clarity around what we can be doing. There's conversation around, engagement around what we can be doing to make bigger impact on those very, very big kind of challenges that we have in front of us. I think I see that both from it being addressed at a small micro roaster level all the way up to large organizations really adopting sustainability inside of their practices, sustainability in the full circle of not only what are we doing as an organization here locally, but how are we translating that back to our buying practices and our buying principles too. We have a long way to go, but I think part of this is elevating kind of all ships in this scenario, raising all ships so that we're looking at the full circle of sustainability, both at origin, also at cafe, at here at the consumption side of it, and with consumers. Though I think our primary focus right now is more on the commercial space and more on the producer space too.
Yeah, I think it's understandable. I'm not sure that I have mixed feelings about how much consumers want to be involved directly.
For sure.
But it seems like when there is consumer opportunities such as attending the expo, I love the expo. I've gone every year since my first one in the early '90s. But so obviously I'm a believer. But it seems like they're mostly though end up with very, very fanatical high-end coffee
prosumers.
Right? Yeah, really kind of people like me on the cusp who kind of either play it or at least they put themselves to sleep at night imagining they're going to have a coffee business.
Right.
Some of those people haven't turned. In fact, the coffee we're drinking today is Big Shoulders Kenya. And we just had Tim Coonan on, and Tim said he started in his garage as a home roasting.
Yeah, these dreams, these aspirations. I think coffee, it to some degree and to some individuals is straightforward. And it's again they honor the tradition, they honor the ritual of it, and they embrace that, and they say. There's such an opportunity here to do something different, do something unique that represents me and represents a great product. How can I deliver on that? You and I both have likely been a part of many conversations where people have this goal of, I want to see coffee. I have my own story with coffee. I want to take that story and translate it into a cafe, a small roasting operation, a cafe inside of my church, etc. We see those different examples, and I think we're also very understanding of and supportive, but knowing there are going to be some challenges that you'll come up against. And how do we not diminish your dream, but how do you find the right get them to focus on the right things? having the greatest latte art skills amongst your team isn't always going to be as well received as like great customer service inside of your cafes.
Well, there, no matter how great the coffee is, I say this as someone who's pretty much devoted to that. But no matter how great the coffee is, it sure is nice to have someone be pleasant to you and not
Yeah.
not mispronounce your name and not make fun of you because you're at the cream table.
Of course, like just meet them where they're at and be kind. Again, going back to that, we see these people in some cases more than they see their families. That's pretty special. And so how do we get folks to honor that?
Yeah.
I mean, think of a similar industry where that we have that opportunity. Maybe like a gym, if you work the front desk
Right.
at a gym or something.
Bartender, maybe.
Bartender, maybe. And you know,
Maybe.
maybe there's a side story there too. But
You might not remember the second half of the conversation, but
right. But it's unique, and I
Yeah.
love that people understand that and they want to grasp onto that too.
That's and that is, and I must remember, baristas are a significant portion of the workforce. I mean, and that is, and after all, I've got to admire baristas because they're after my heart, because the brewing it and brewing coffee is. That's one thing where the liquor business isn't really similar, even though there can be a great, I suppose, mixologist bartender. I don't know. I'm
Sure.
not that big on mixed drinks, but
Sure.
but it's a skill. Definitely being able to make coffee is that final step.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think when service professionals, when coffee professionals really honor that approach to it, like it just makes it shine even more. Yes, the blood, sweat, and tears that they hopefully not literally pour into that cup every day, but then the extension of that, of honoring that relationship that they have with their customers. Baristas are our biggest opportunity to impact the consumer side of it in the most significant way.
You know, when I realized, I really had a consciousness, a quantum leap in consciousness about what you're saying, Marcus. I was at it was not last SCAA, that was Boston. The one before was in Seattle, and I stayed right next to, I can't remember the name of the roaster, there was one right next door to our hotel, and it was they were there at the show as well, but this poor person was ringing up customers while they were craft brewing coffee. And I'm thinking, I can barely use my automatic while I'm talking to you. That's why I filled it every.
I think. Thank you, Kevin. I think we ask a lot of our baristas, not only as far as getting up, at very early points in the day, and coming in and dialing in on coffee, which is, a challenge in and of itself. Some days is in particular more of a challenge. Thank you, Kevin. But also, to be ready for what the day puts in front of them. Challenges that come out from service issues to equipment failures to running out of product to a poor close the night before, whatever it is, not only to kind of deal with all of that and process and deal with them in the moment, but then also have a smile on their face, or just generally be kind and pleasant with folks, and honor that kind of moment that you have with customers. And so the impact that baristas, that coffee professionals serving coffee on a daily basis have on the presence of coffee, the position of coffee to consumers is, in my eyes, one of the most meaningful components. And that is something that the U.S. chapter, I think the U.S. marketplace is unique from that perspective. We have a very diverse coffee professional barista community working in a wide variety of types of execution, whether it's multi-chain stores, whether it's smaller micro roasters, or whether it's just a single shop out in the middle of nowhere. I think they're all servicing different types of customers. They all come with a wide variety of background, and we should not only honor the relationship that they put forth with their customers, but certainly honor them as growing and developing individuals too.
Yeah, it's so true, and you're right. I guess the next question I'm going to have for you is simply, What coffee maker do you use the most at home?
Oh, you know the answer to that. Come on. It is the Bonavita BV 1900.
Okay, Laura, that's I've kept my promise. Laura's the owner.
I'm not sure I would get out of here alive if I didn't say that. But you know, having had such a great history with Espresso Supply and Bonavita, and you know, working alongside that product, working alongside great individuals there like Roger Whitman, who now with Marco, but Roger and Jim, and of course Laura and Myra Gold, just some great folks in the development of that product too. And I think, yeah, it's a great brewer, very approachable. It's the one that anytime anyone asks me, oh, I need to buy a brewer for my house. Not that there aren't a wide variety of other great brewers.
Right, of
Technivorm makes a great brewer. OXO makes a great brewer.
The Brim, this is...
Absolutely.
Love it.
They make great brewers, but I've found that the Bonavita is for me, it's a very approachable product. It brews very, very consistently, not overly complicated. If someone is starting their journey, I ask them to make that investment in a really great brewer.
And I know money doesn't mean anything when you're on my level, but
Ooh, tell me what level that is, Kevin. I can't wait to get there.
but the Bonavita, you know, the one I have in my kitchen, and I could probably, especially after saying making sure I asked Marcus that question, I could probably get anyone in the line I want. But thank you, Laura. But I got the $99 one,
Yep.
and that is a really beautiful.
You've got an amazing heating element in that brewer. It heats up quickly. Yeah. It brews fast, but not too fast. A really solid fundamentals of brewing built in that, from a great extraction rate, great heat retention instead of the I mean, I'm basically doing a Bonavita commercial. Sorry, everybody. But just a really solid brewer and very approachable in price point.
Speaking of commercials, I need to do one for CoffeeCon. One of the things that I'm proudest about is, as CoffeeCon's grown, we are getting more farmer attention. More farmers come to CoffeeCon, and they come specifically to attend our sustainability panel, as well as four-way flight. Because that's the other side of the equation that everyone in our audience here in the U.S. may not be aware of. Mm-hmm. But a number of producing countries where coffee's grown, some of the greatest coffees in the world, like Guatemala, are newer at having a consumption culture. Right. That's matches ours, and a great place for them to come and learn is CoffeeCon, and I'm very proud of that, and I'm proud of you because you created one of our best presentations, and that is the four-way flight, which takes four different
coffees, one coffee brewed four different ways, and kind of getting to experience that singular profile of a coffee and a coffee roast, but brewed in four different capacities. I mean, not only would that be a challenge to execute on for a consumer, but also it takes a specific piece of equipment to kind of, or a range of equipment to kind of execute on that too. And I think what's interesting about that is, again, coffee, we all know, can be very, very dynamic and fluid and interesting. And also your mood changes, right? Like it's what I really appreciate about a cold brew. It's like in some cases I like something maybe more refreshing. And on a hot day, particularly here in Chicago, like a hot cup of coffee just doesn't sound appealing at that moment. I know I'm probably going to get 19 texts of why did you say that, but
18 of them from Doug Zell.
Oh, I blocked him. No, just
oh,
kidding.
good. Yeah,
Just
me
kidding.
too. Yeah.
No, Doug,
yeah, we're kidding.
Doug is one of my favorites. But really, I think understanding, and particularly at that event, understanding that brewed coffee can take different forms without changing the coffee at all, and really can kind of meet consumers where they are as far as wanting to experience different types of flavor profiles, different I guess methods, different levels of kind of care that they have to take to just get to that cup. But also, like, on a weekend, I'm much more open to brewing a different way than I am Monday through Friday. And I think getting folks to understand that coffee can live inside of all of that and be interesting and unique, it really is impactful with a broader understanding of what coffee can be to folks too.
I just wanted to mention to you, maybe I've told you this before, but I don't know if I did or not. After you did four-way flight, I think you in Seattle, CoffeeCon Seattle, I got an email from a lady named Galinda.
Asking for a refund? No,
And she, please, I try to say something nice. See what happens. It's so seldom I try, but anyway, I'm going to try again. And she said, she said, thank you so much for the coffee con. And she said, Marcus's presentation. She said, to let him know that I now spend 15 minutes every morning picking out which coffee brewer to use.
I'm so sorry to her family and friends coming over for coffee. I apologize for that. But great example of even when you start to try new coffees, which is certainly one of the goals, is not only try new brewers, but let's try new processing methods, let's try new origins, let's try new coffees, let's try new farmers inside of a roaster network. And I think, again, broadening that expectation of what coffee can be is exciting.
It is. It is. We've got to have you back more often because there's so many things, and I know that Pat's been giving me she's been one of the cheerleaders over there. She's jumping up and down and going, come on, she did the cut sign on my neck a few times.
Wrap it up.
Yeah. All right, I'm ready. So anyway, thank
you, Pat.
Thank you, and thank you, Marcus,
Thank you, Kevin,
for
very much
being with us. And let's do this again real soon.
Sounds great. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We gotta wait because